Welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the people who have been reaching out to me during this time in my life where I'm going through heartbreak and grieving and, just kind of like reclaiming myself, stepping back into my power and using the tools, right? Walking the walk, doing as best I can. And, you know, it's been difficult. It's been difficult, but the love of community and the support that I've been receiving, and I'm just really grateful for all the people who have been reaching out. So thank you so much if you're one of those people, and even if you've been holding me in your thoughts. I've had some people, it's like even listening to my podcast, hearing the tone in my voice has like shifted and is starting to get lighter. So like I'm so grateful that people are so tuned into me. I've been doing this podcast for 10 years and sharing my heart, and my journey has been hopefully inspiring. It's certainly been vulnerable. And I've been sharing as much as I can while still maintaining a sense of sanity. So here I am today, and I wanted to share with you. So this is going to be a three-part series at least. Could be more later on, but three parts. And this is based on, I have a dear friend who has been taking me through a sort of adapted 12-step program with regards to grief and heartache. And it has helped me so much. We go for a walk and talk, and she kind of, reins me in and gives me some direction, guidance, asks questions, listens. And if you're watching this podcast, you know who you are. Thank you. I feel like you've saved my life in a lot of ways. So it's been humbling to have this sort of level of help and support as a master coach and someone who, supposedly has her shit together. And I mean, I do in a lot of ways, but like anyone, I am humbled in life. Nobody is immune to these things, especially when it comes to relationships. It takes two, and two willing participants. And if one kind of steps out, you're kind of, you have to dance alone, I guess. So I've been doing this dance alone and walking through my grief. And yeah, so having lots of tools and people step up in my life has been really humbling, but also I feel so loved. So today is the first of the three-part series, and kind of in a nutshell, the first step that I've been working through is admitting that I was powerless over heartbreak and, the sort of grief that's been coming up. And as a person that likes to take matters into her own hands, maybe just as a self-made woman, entrepreneur, and a person who's really created the life that she absolutely loves, this is a little hard for me to swallow because, I mean, that sounds so disempowering, doesn't it? Like, I have no power. I don't want to feel that way. Let me step into my power. So, to me, it's been like this process of letting people help me and admitting that this was something that was so big, it like literally brought me to my knees and really shook my sense of reality. I mean, anyone who's been through heartache and heartbreak, and I will probably cry during this podcast as I have my last couple, and I have no problem with that. Tears are gifts, but admitting that this has been like the biggest thing, the most painful thing I've ever gone through, has been freeing, and not expecting myself to have all the answers, especially with regards to the other person who, there's not answers to be had for me from that person. So I've had to, again, do this dance on my own, but there is something about, just kind of recognizing and realizing that, hey, this is a really big thing that I'm going through. And can I be compassionate? Can I become aware of my needs that I have during this time and not be afraid to ask for them? And I have felt very needy. I have felt, I'm usually pretty self-sufficient and I get things done. And I think if you have a peek inside of my life, that you can see lots of evidence of that. And there's, things that have been temporarily derailed, though in other ways, I have been very much on track with like my business and my trips and my trainings and retreats and stuff. And like, I know that when I show up for those things, I show up big. I help to give people a transformational experience. And the thing is, like, when people come to me, it's usually not because like their life's all hunky dory and I don't know, it's just like, okay, this is just the cherry on the cake. I mean, sometimes that happens, but a lot of times people who come to me are at a sort of breaking point and they're going through or hoping to go through some kind of spiritual transformation and looking for a teacher that can help them like walk through the flame of their own emotion. And here I am as a spiritual teacher, and like, I don't just like read from the Yoga Sutras and like concepts from the Bhagavad Gita. Like, I live it. I really try to walk my walk. And you know what? Sometimes it's sloppy, and sometimes it's dark and ugly and foggy. And, some days it's just like counting your breaths, second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour. And those of you who have been following me for a while know that the title of my first book was Thriving After Addiction. So I had my issues with addictions and bulimia and all these different sort of violent coping mechanisms that, it's just like I was just trying to figure my way. And I can look at that with a lot of compassion. And so if you're going through any of that or you've been through some of that, like, you're my people, like my heart is with you. It is hard. And if we think of why we go to those things, it's because there was a sort of pain that felt like we couldn't reach it, and we're just trying to find a way to touch it and know it, and then hopefully release it. And this sort of admission in this first step of powerlessness over this heartbreak is important because, like, people don't comply. I cannot control this other person. And, that's difficult, especially when you pictured your life with them and they were, in many ways, a big part of your life. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, they're not. It makes you have to take a step back and, just kind of, what is in my control? What can I control? Because, all right, well, I'm powerless over him and I'm powerless over this whole like situation kind of, but what is in my power? And that's the empowerment part. It's sort of like you have to like see what you don't have control over to then know what you do have control over. It's sort of like duality and non-duality. I'm a fan of both and I practice both when I take silent meditation and I really sort of like transcend the body and witness myself and not try to control. I remember who I am so that I can sort of go back in and then play in that space. It's sort of like recognizing that you're not the Maya, the illusion, so that when you go back in, as we're having this human experience, you have to go back in, then you can dance with it. You can kind of use it like a, I don't know, like a silk or a veil or something and play in it. And admitting that I was powerless over the situation because I was in denial, and I still have moments where, like, for example, I'm sleeping and I'll have like a dream where we're back together, or that, he apologized, or that like we found some sort of reconciliation. And I have had to admit to myself that that's like a fantasy that I'd been playing out, like, because again, if you're, and it was a conscious relationship for the most part, and recognizing that's fantasy and that's not reality has been really difficult. I don't know about other people, but for me, the first thing that I did was look at myself. Okay, what did I do wrong? What were my mistakes? Like, where can I take accountability? And did that, and then I started ruminating on it too much because I like there's a part of me that wanted to fix it. Like my heart's like, fix this. I'm hurting. I'm like, I'm trying. It's kind of impossible. Um, So I did that dance. And then if you listen to my prior podcasts, like the last couple, I talked about the questions that came to me. And again, these questions came on some of these walks I was taking with this dear friend. And the three questions that really pulled me out of like, I mean, I felt like I was just dying every day was what did I do right and good in the relationship? Because for me, one of my core values is to do a good job. So, in the four agreements of Don Miguel Ruiz, one of the agreements is like always do your best. And I try to live by that. I mean, for the most part, I'm not perfect, of course, like anyone, but I pride myself in trying to do a good job. And I felt like, oh my God, I didn't do a good job. And it was just like tearing me up. So I had to ask myself those questions to remember all the good things that I did, all the good ways that I was like a sort of stand-up partner and loving and supportive. So many ways. When I started like unpacking that, it's like, woof, like I was like, oh, and so that helped me to crawl the hole. Second question was, what am I doing good and right in my life in general? You know, because these things are all connected and so much. Gosh, I like have helped thousands of people by now, and maybe with my podcasts and meditations, hundreds of thousands of people. So that helps me. That was a stepping stone to further pull me out of, you know, this sort of mm, thinking that I can control the situation with my mind, which is not possible. Even though the mind's like, yes, you can. I'm like, no, no, you can't, girl. Sit down. And then the last question that I asked myself was, what can I do right or good for myself in this moment? So, you know, like eat something, take a shower, take a walk, chant a mantra, meditate, um, remind myself of all the good things that I have done today. So these things are within my control. These are the things that I can. In my autonomy, I can recognize these things about myself and I can pull back into that while still admitting what I'm powerless over. You know, waves of grief come up. It just happens. This is painful. It's the most painful thing I've ever been through. And those times are difficult. And so I have to kind of like surrender and process and, you know, try to give myself what I need in that moment to be able to do that work. But it's going to come up. I'm not a sociopath. Good news. I feel heartache. I feel the depths of my pain. And sometimes I have to come up for air and distract myself. And I think that that's just compassionate. But yeah, going in and feeling and processing is it's part of it. It's part of it. So I've been walking that walk, baby, sashaying a little bit if I can, dancing it if I can, crawling, kind of like almost like baby crawling my way through this. But I'm here and I feel so much compassion for those who have had heartache like this. I've never felt anything like this. I in the past have said, yeah, grief is, you know, I can process grief and that's okay, but I've never felt this kind of heartache ever in my life. Even I lost my mother a few years ago. Um, you know, I've been through breakups, divorce, and all this, and just never had that connection. So I know that I love big and I went all in, and you know, I can be proud of that. Like in that way, I did a good job. Like it opened up my heart fully, all the elements. And so I'm sort of like piecing together the mosaic of my heart now. And so this first step of like admitting that I was powerless over this heartache and it allows me to be more compassionate to myself and knowing that pain's going to come up. There's nothing wrong with me that pain's coming up. Of course, if you spend almost 7 years with someone in a romantic relationship, you're going to feel these things. And so that's been powerful for me. And then asking myself those questions that I went more into detail in the last couple of podcasts. So, yeah, going through these steps, and you know, this is the first one. I'm going to record another podcast based on the second step. Has helped me to separate out what I can control and what I'm powerless over. And it's like the clear formula. There's like the neutral circumstances, and then there's the thoughts and the emotions. You have a say in the thoughts. The circumstance, maybe not, right? Especially if it involves more than one person. So the circumstance is going to stay the same, but what can I control? I can choose what I focus on. I can choose how I direct my life. I can choose how I treat myself. I can choose to show up for myself and do the spiritual practices that I talk about all the time and that I really try to live. And again, maybe not perfect, maybe a little sloppy, but still showing up. And I think that over time, that effort kind of accumulates in your life. And that's when you see a difference. And when people look at all the things that I've created and what I do and how I show up, I mean, even recording this podcast, I'm leaving for India. I'm leaving for New Jersey to go spend some time with my dad for 2 days, and then I'm leaving for India. Like, I have a lot of grief. There's anxiety. There's all the things. It is within me. It's not like I'm disassociating. I'm fucking feeling it. But I'm here for you. And I'm here for me. And like, I love you. And I love me. And so I'm choosing to show up, even with pain. So it's possible. It's possible that pain and love can live in the same house and that they can, I don't know, kind of blend a little bit, process. But I choose to show up. I choose to show up in my pain. I choose to be raw and vulnerable and real with you. And this is what's going on in my life. And I'm still smiling, even though there's tears in my eyes. And now I'm working on turning my pain into art. And this is my Saraswati year. I've been looking forward to this year where I'm not working as much, but I am deeply going into creative processes, which is then going to bring about more prosperity because my vibration lifts and I'm going to be chanting a lot of mantra and learning more than three chords on my harmonium and hopefully forming a yogi punk rock band, which is like, yes, I wanted to do that my whole life. So I guess in short, you're worth it. You're worth the work. Community is so important. Like, find your people. And the more that you work on yourself, the more your circle's going to shift. And it's a practice in vairagyam, which is non-attachment, because sometimes people come into your life for a season and a reason, and other times they stick around longer. But till death do you part, the relationship you have with yourself and God is the one that you have, like, you know, as long as you can while we're in this body. All right, well, I just want to announce that we only have 5 spots left for my trip to Japan. I'm so stoked. I've had quite a few signups lately. And yeah, I mean, if you want a leader that knows how to lead, knows how to show up, I used to live there. I speak a good amount of the language. There's going to be some bonding. There is 2 days of life coaching that is included and mandatory before going overseas. We're going to be immersing ourselves in the culture and the tea ceremonies, kabuki, martial arts, Reiki, like the food, like the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, all the things. And I want you to understand Japan from the perspective of like immersion and like feeling the language on your tongue, like tasting the food, like and digesting it in your belly and looking at it from this space of understanding rather than just being like a sightseeing tour. It's going to be much deeper than that. And there's always some spiritual transformation when you work with me. So it's just a package deal. It's like trying to take salt out of water if you try to separate me from that. So it won't happen. So if that sounds good, you're my people. Reach out to me. Again, there's only 5 spots left. Once they're spoken for, they're spoken for. We are taking deposits now, and you get a little discount until, I think it's January 15th. So it's right around the corner. If you're listening to this, if the podcast comes out after that, you can message me, and I can extend a grace period a couple weeks after that. You can get a little discount for yourself. All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Namaste.